Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into a genuinely fascinating journey exploring the shared philosophical roots of our modern crises. We're going to look at how a massive fundamental shift in how we view ourselves has sent literal shockwaves through our politics, our societies, and even our most advanced technologies. So let's get right into it.
What do racism, transhumanism, and artificial intelligence all have in common? Well, on the surface, absolutely nothing, right? I mean, one is an ancient prejudice, one is a futuristic sci-fi aspiration, and the other is just the software running on our laptops. But as our source material brilliantly reveals, these seemingly totally unrelated topics all trace back to one profound misunderstanding of what a human being actually is. Here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with the modern anthropological crisis, examine tribalism and covenantal exclusivity, contrast transhumanism with non-contradiction, dive into the AI alignment dilemma, and finally, look at recovering the human definition.
Okay, Section 1. The Modern Anthropological Crisis. Searching for the Human Definition.
All these modern debates we hear about identity, they're actually downstream of a fundamental loss of understanding about what makes us human. The author of our sources, Andrew Corner, introduces this incredibly interesting concept called disordered transcendence. He argues that when humanity loses confidence in a transcendent creator, we don't just stop looking for an origin story. We simply start looking elsewhere. We take an empty throne, and we inevitably place something else right upon it. We attempt to find ultimate meaning in contingent things like our biology, the state, or our technology. Basically, we take the particular and we make it ultimate.
Moving on to Section 2. Tribalism and covenantal exclusivity, ancestry as anthropology.
To really understand this, the source material looks at how religious and ethnic exclusivity can function as a form of disordered transcendence. Neutrally presenting the worldview of Rabbi Tovia Singer, it notes his argument for a strictly closed textual framework based on the Tanakh. In this specific view, a physical lineage and a very specific geography actually determine an eternal, immutable covenant. The mission here is exclusive. It functions as a light to the nations, and is tied directly to maintaining this specific personal relationship with the God of Israel and remaining loyal to the Torah.
So, in this framework of covenantal exclusivity, your identity is tightly bound to a specific ethnic lineage and rigid textual compliance. The source directly contrasts this with the Christian concept of the universal logos, specifically bringing up Galatians 3:28, neither Jew nor Greek. Under this universal framework, human value doesn't come from your genetic lineage or any tribal affiliation. Instead, it derives universally from the imago Dei, the idea of being made in the image of God. The particular becomes a vehicle for the universal rather than a supremacist end in itself.
The downstream effects of this worldview are incredibly profound. When ancestry becomes your anthropology, that crucial foundational question of what is a human being gets completely replaced by biological differences. The particular tribe or nation becomes the ultimate measure of truth. And dissenting views, like those holding to universal spiritual equality, are structurally invalidated. It's like a closed loop where bloodline or geography attempts to sit right on that empty throne we talked about earlier.
All right, Section 3. Transhumanism versus non-contradiction, Humanity 2.0 and self-creation. Now we are pivoting from ancient tribalism all the way to futuristic self-creation, looking at thinkers like Steve Fuller and his concept of Humanity 2.0. To understand the flaw the author sees in transhumanism, the source material anchors us in a heavy but absolutely vital philosophical concept, the principle of non-contradiction. Championed by Aristotle and St. Thomas Aquinas, it simply states that a thing cannot both be and not be at the exact same time and in the same respect. When you apply this to humanity, it establishes an unbreakable boundary. A being is either the uncreated creator or it is a created entity. You literally cannot be both.
Classical Thomism firmly insists humans are created beings, meant to reflect God, which maintains an infinite qualitative distinction between creator and creature. But in sharp contrast, Steve Fuller's transhumanist convergence theory suggests humans can use technology to become our own self-creators. The author points out that this is, quite literally, the definition of the primal sin, the oldest lie. Ye shall be as gods. Think about it. Transhumanism is essentially asking us to swallow a massive logical paradox, the idea that we can be the contingent product of nature and the absolute master of nature at the exact same time.
Let's dive into Section 4, the AI alignment dilemma. Coding values without a subject. Now, this metaphysical confusion isn't just for philosophers sitting in ivory towers. It is urgently bleeding into our modern technology. It raises a critical, incredibly pressing question.
How on earth do we align AI with human values if we can't even define what a human actually is? If our modern worldview is based purely on secular evolution, where humanity is just a temporary, accidental stage of biological development, well, evolution simply cannot give you a moral compass. An evolutionary is cannot provide a moral ought for coding artificial intelligence.
Because of this, modern techno-philosophy creates what you could call an inverted godhead. Just look at how this flips. In the traditional hierarchy, God creates man in his image, and man uses technology as a tool. Simple enough, right? But this direction has entirely reversed. Now the origin is unknown, the development is just blind evolution, the highest value is simply intelligence, and the goal is transhuman self-creation. Humanity is no longer the pinnacle of creation. Instead, we have made ourselves the raw material for our own technology.
Our source material actually includes a fascinating experiment the author ran with an AI chatbot. He tried to get the AI to logically evaluate the exclusive religious claims of Rabbi Singer that we discussed earlier. And the AI? It completely short-circuited. It hit a safety wall because secular AI models are programmed with a liberal moral relativism that just cannot parse absolute metaphysical truths or critique a theology that relies on ethnic exclusivity. When you don't have a stable anthropology, your values become based purely on social utility and safety protocols, rather than inherent human dignity.
This brings us to Section 5, Recovering the Human Definition, the Catholic Intellectual Tradition and the Kachan.
So, how do we get out of this? The source material proposes an analysis of how the Catholic intellectual tradition offers a framework out of this massive interlocking crisis. The author notes a really crucial distinction here. He says, the problem begins when the ability to transform nature becomes confused with the authority to determine what nature ought to be. I mean, progress is good. Curing cancer is good. Building remarkable machines is fantastic. The danger arises only when we use technology not to improve human life, but to redefine human nature itself.
To combat this dangerous shift, the author introduces the concept of the katan. It's a biblical term for a restraining force. He points out that traditions like the Catholic Catechism provide this much-needed boundary. It serves as a catonic force by insisting that humans are endowed with spiritual and immortal life, intellect, and free will, but crucially that we are creatures, not gods. We can cooperate with grace, for sure, but we absolutely cannot manufacture it in a Silicon Valley laboratory.
The author's proposed synthesis restores a very specific hierarchy to get us back on track. It puts the creator before creation. It puts the human person before their tribal category or their technological utility. It puts grace before merit and truth before ideology. We desperately need a framework that allows for incredible technological and societal progress, but one that doesn't sacrifice the human person to ancient tribalism or some transhumanist future. We need human flourishing without the abolition of man.
Which brings us to a final, incredibly provocative thought to leave you with. Will humanity remember who made us, or will we risk absolutely everything trying to become our own creator? It's a profound question, and one that underpins our politics, our technology, and ultimately our entire future. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer today. Keep asking those big questions.